and my manager, who is a man, is repeatedly passing behind me and brushing up against my lower back, or a point to talk about how many times he's exercised this week. Those are little things.
So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on in.
Toxic masculinity is a real thing. We'll start by having the agreeing people come up now.
Of course, it's going to be all the women. Oh, and some of them. Oh, wow. Okay. Caught me off guard already.
Do I think toxic masculinity exists? Yes. I don't think every guy has it, obviously. Growing up as a guy, we are kind of taught to be a certain way. Every guy has to like be strong and like sports and drink beer and like no, we don't need to do that. We can enjoy things that are not masculine. For an example, I like candles. You know what I mean? Like somebody will come into my apartment and be like, "Oh, that's gay."
Very.
It's like, no, it's not.
I'm just kidding.
It's a wood scented candle. What do you mean? But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I am coming from on the point.
I think toxic masculinity is overused as a phrase, but it's totally a thing. I think there's these guys trying to like prove that they're macho and prove that they are just strong and buff, and then they overcompensate for their insecurities, and it comes across way too aggressive, and it just rubs people the wrong way.
I agree with what both of you guys have said so far. I think you've done a really good job offering definitions as far as what it looks like as a woman who has been on the receiving end of some of that toxicity. My best way to define it is just by giving more examples of what I think it is. If I'm in the workplace, the service industry, for example, and my manager, who is a man, is repeatedly passing behind me and brushing up against my lower back, or a point to talk about how many times he's exercised this week. Those are little things that kind of add up as a woman who has experienced toxic masculinity that is rather...
I gotta stop it real quick because I don't like the guy's definition of toxic masculinity. I definitely don't like her description of it either. I'm one who doesn't believe in toxic masculinity, okay? Masculinity is not toxic. Are there toxic men? Are there men who don't know how to be masculine? Are there men who do things that are creepy and weird and all these other synonyms of those two words I just used? Yes, 100%. But masculinity within itself is not toxic because a masculine man will do the right things even in a situation that doesn't benefit them. When people say toxic masculinity, I think it's just a way to crucify the things you don't like about men. For example, the young lady said, "Oh, if my manager is brushing up against my lower back every time he walks by me, that's a creep, okay? That's assault. Report him." Masculinity doesn't operate like that. And this is where I say you need to have experienced true masculinity, real masculinity, in order to understand what it is not. And if you haven't, then it's very apparent because you will say things like that. Also, the guy saying about the macho stuff, I answer all these people and everything they've said by, that's not masculinity. That's just a toxic person. Whether you're a female, whether you're a male, whether you're a woman trying to be a man, transgender, whatever you are, there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. It's all just toxicity, and that's what it needs to be called.
Frustrating. And I think the overcompensation, like you spoke to, is just really unnecessary. Like, can we have a conversation without the macho persona coming out? Because at the end of the day, I see people as people. When I look at a man, I don't see a man first, I see a person. So you don't have to prove to me that you're a man, or whatever the case may be.
If a man approaches you having to prove that he's a man, that's a problem with that man. You don't equate that behavior to all men. That's just ridiculous.
I think I agree with you most actually on what toxic masculinity is, but I would even go a step further and say that I think some men are just so afraid to be feminine or seen as feminine that they go above and beyond. Like, they have to show off to their boys, like, I'm a man, I can do this, I can, An example of that from my personal life is I dated a guy and I'm really into skincare, right? I think it's important to take care of yourself. He would not. No skincare, would not. My little drops or my face masks with me. Skincare's for everybody, but you correlate it so much with a woman that you're just refusing to take care of yourself altogether. That just doesn't make sense to me, and I think maybe that's an extreme example, but I think it's one that's common.
Again, should he have joined his girl in her treatments? Sure, why not? Like, if my girl wanted me to try some shit, I would do it. What happened for him to be like, I don't want to do it? Did he just shut down? Are you trying to force this habit that takes hours that he doesn't want to do? This part here, I don't necessarily blame her. I don't think she's completely wrong. I think you definitely should have some kind of self-care routine, and for men that looks different than women because we care about different things. But to say that because he didn't do the skin care routine that I wanted him to do, he's toxic is wild. And she even said it, that might be a little extreme. Yes, because it is extreme.
Toxic masculinity, I think, is sometimes the root of the problem with when you think of like school shooters or really people who are getting into fights at school that may lean more masculine or boys because they don't know how to deal with emotions. There's not emotional intelligence that's being taught, and emotion for some reason is tied to the feminine, or showing emotion is more girly, or having a candle being described as gay is nothing I can even comprehend. I'm raising two sons. We always encourage them to have emotion, and that crying was okay, but I think that's more rare. If they took that outside the home, they were made fun of for it, or potentially made fun of. Now, my youngest son does seem to be surrounded by more emotionally intelligent people, so he probably felt it less than my older son. We just encouraged that all emotions, anger's okay as well. Sad is okay, tears are okay, happy's okay. But I think that if we encourage our boys or those presenting as such to stifle all of their emotions, I think that's where the aggression comes out. They don't know any other way than to become aggressive, and I think that that's a real detriment.
I have so much to say about her. First off, her outfit's kind of fly. I just hope she's not wearing them Samoas without any socks in them, because yeah, you know white folks be doing that shit. But that's that's besides the point. That's one of the first things I noticed. But I wanted to just go back real quick to what she said.
It's taught and
with emotions, and I want to rewind it because I want to say it right after she's done talking.
Of the problem with when you think of like school shooters or really people who are getting into fights at school that may lean more masculine.
School shooters, not masculine. School shooters is a perfect example of the absence of masculine. Now, I know that people will say, oh, well, they have fathers in their lives. They, some of these school shooters still did it, yes. But did they have a healthy relationship with said father? Okay. Masculinity is not you hiding your emotions. It's not you discounting your emotions. It's you regulating your emotions. As a man, you can't be in the world and be an emotional man. Think about this. Jails are filled of what? Men. What kind of men? Emotional men. Why? Because these men weren't able to control themselves in a situation where if they would have just exerted some level of self-control, they wouldn't be in jail. That might not be all the men that are in jail, but that's a large quantity. That's number one. Number two, she talks about fighting in school. Boys are different than men. Okay. As a young child, even if you have a good father in your house, you're probably going to get into a fight here or there. Trying to equate fighting in general to toxic masculinity is the problem. As a man, you need to have an outlet. Men and women are not the same. That's obvious. But not only are we not the same, we don't also feel emotions the same. When a woman gets mad, she might tend to cry. She might want to talk to her girls about her emotions. She might want to do something that lets the emotion out. When a man gets upset, him letting his emotions out a lot of times is either getting into a fight, either doing something physical like lifting weights or going to the range, or actually spending some time alone where he can decompress. Men and women are different. And I think this is, again, one of the bigger problems that we have where we're all humans. So, we do this and you should know. What we should do is women do this to decompress, men do this to decompress. Both of these things are okay.
Our boys, because they don't know how to deal with emotions. There's not emotional intelligence that's being taught, and emotion for some reason is tied to the feminine, or showing emotion is more girly, or having a candle being described as gay is nothing I can even comprehend.
The candle being described as gay, I wouldn't say that's accurate, but emotions are more feminine, not because men don't have emotions, but because women are more in tune to their emotions. They have to be because they rear children. Okay, you ever seen a mother with the baby versus a dad with the baby? Look at the two different things. A dad's gonna throw his kid up in the air. A dad's gonna swing his kid around. A dad's gonna be rough and playful. A mom is like, "Oh, you have a boo-boo? What's wrong? Tell me what's going on." I want both of these uh aspects of how a mom and a dad is are very important, but they're also very different. And the fact that we can't just agree on them being different and then try to exemplify the best things out of both sides is the problem. We're not the same. And I'm going to keep saying that, and it's probably going to get redundant, but it's just a fact. We are not the same.
I'm raising 2 sons. We always encourage them to have emotion, and that crying was okay, but I think that's more rare. If they took that outside the home, they were made fun of for it, or potentially made fun of. Now, my youngest son does seem to be surrounded by more emotionally intelligent people, so he probably felt it less than my older son. We just encouraged that all emotions, anger's okay as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Sad is okay, tears are okay, happy's okay. But I think that if we encourage our boys or those presenting as such to stifle all of their emotions, I think that's where the aggression comes out. They don't know any other way than to become aggressive, and I think that that's a real detriment.
And that's
They don't know any other way but to become aggressive. That's because men and women show their feelings different. That's all that is. Like, a guy needs to be able to get that aggression on. One thing that they're not taking into account is we are also animals. Okay, if you go back 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, men were protectors and providers. They would get together with other men. They would go hunt. They would bring back the food, and that was a way of getting out the level of aggression that you have within you that is completely normal. Being aggressive is not a bad thing. Now, not knowing how to manage that aggression is the bad thing. And this is, again, another point where women don't understand that and think, oh no, you can't be aggressive. Well, if you're not aggressive, you know what you're doing with that as a man? You're bottling that up. And eventually that's gonna explode. So you gotta figure out how to get your aggression out. Just because you have the urge of aggression doesn't make you a bad man. It just means you're normal. Like, we have that pent up energy. Women have that pent up energy as well. They just release it in a different format.
where you think the toxicness comes from. Like, that's when it's stepping into the toxic.
Right, and that there's some sort of expectation, perhaps said, perhaps quiet, that boys, men have to be in athletics. Boys, men have to be in a certain sector of employment. Boys, men have to be the breadwinner. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on boys and men.
No, it's not a lot of pressure when it's applied correctly. And it's even with the employment part. Men like doing things that have to do with their hands, building, destroying things, being creative as far as building, and women like to do things that involve people and how they feel. That just shows how different we are. And if you look at the studies, or you don't even have to do a study, just look at what fields men go into versus what fields women go into.
And now I think it is a great time to bring up our one disagreeer. Come on up.
Yeah, that would have been me.
Why don't you start by just kind of letting us know why you think that there's really no toxic masculinity?
It really comes from just kind of the perception people have on how men react naturally. This toxicness that stems from like the household, how they grew up. And as you can see, like through the feminist movement, it's more empowering for women to be single moms and to do whatever they want. And that a lot of the times those men that they deem as toxic actually came up from those households when they don't have the structure. Because like you said, it's a good for the women's side to have, you know, be emotional and let you express yourself. But without the man, you need to have someone in there that has like a foundation. And that brings men a lot of strength, that they have that example of a man to be and be strong and how to actually handle your emotions instead of just letting them out and stuff. I think it's a disclassification of just maybe people who have issues, you know, maybe they need help in some sort of way, they feel insecure, but by victimizing them as like this, they're a toxic male and putting them in this box, it further isolates them from like society and pushes them down deeper down that rabbit hole. By isolating these men and like kind of putting men in like a trait of like, okay, that's toxic, you know, I'm gonna cut them off or whatever. I feel like it's very dangerous and it's very hindering to society because, you know, you need to understand where the guy's coming from too. You know, it's not just they have a perfect personality and so they're going to be overly masculine and now they're overtaking things. Like it's never that situation as you guys alluded to earlier. It's more of like they need help. Be cool. Maybe they're trying to talk to you. Maybe they're trying to have some sort of conversation, but it comes off a certain way. And since society is labeling that, they get labeled as a toxic person and it's hurting them as a whole and it's not helpful at all.
So you're saying like the label itself is what's continuing to allow men to be toxic, if that is a thing. Like what it's being seen as is toxic, right? Like,
yeah,
because it's basically just writing them off, like, oh, you're toxic, so like you're.
Yeah, and it's like a thing too, where it's like, oh, well, you're gonna label me that? Okay, maybe I might actually go full in and be that 100%. And maybe that's where the incel movement's kind of coming from, you know, the we hate women. You know, I feel like what it started from is like the feminist side of we hate men. And men were like, okay, what's going on? And as a reaction to that, you know, it starts to have that swing of, you know, everybody's being on different polarizing sides and, you know, because they don't feel represented.
I mean, what do you guys think of that? You go ahead.
I appreciate the need to remove labels from things because I think as a society we do tend to over-label things. Your claim to women having emotions and needing a man to balance them out per se is not true. And by implying that women need a foundation, you're implying that women can't build foundations on their own.
No, that's what you're implying.
If you are inferring that women are more emotional, that doesn't mean they're incapable of handling their emotions when a man isn't around.
See, you're implying, you were taking these things out of context. No one is saying that a woman can't handle her emotions, but women are more emotional. Is that not a fact?
In order to grasp hard concepts as humans, that we need to label things in order for our brains to make sense of them. So like I said, while I do appreciate your call to not maybe label men as toxic because then that could just fuel the toxicity, do you have any other suggestions maybe then for what we should call behavior that men exhibit that is per se like dangerous or reactive, which is something I heard you say as well?
I don't think, you were saying like a man needs to stabilize her, right? You're saying
No.
it's the effect of the combination of
Yeah,
the
I was
two?
saying like in the household, like the emotions kind of like the women are like the water and the men are the concrete barrier in a way.
What do you think of that?
I disagree. I live by myself, I support myself, and I have since I was 18 years old. I've had to find that.
What does that have to do with the fact that if you have a man in your life, you tend to have someone who can balance out your emotional state? If you're more emotional, that kind of makes sense if your partner is less emotional.
Stability on my own without a man beside me. And
Yeah, because you
while
have
I
to.
agree that women's emotions might be more fluid, I don't think that having concrete around to balance it out is necessarily a good thing. I think that sounds a bit stifling, actually.
Again, I don't even know what to say to her. It sounds stifling to have a man around to balance you. She even said it to balance you out. Okay.
Okay.
So I was gonna say there's
Okay.
like this whole complex of like alpha and beta males, and I've been labeled beta male majority of my life.
Beta.
And there's like this pendulum swing, and we got to find the balance in the middle where we can appreciate both sides, so that we're not toxic males trying to overcompensate for insecurities, and we also got to appreciate our feminine side and women so that we can meet in the middle.
Fair. What do you guys think about just everything that is the first original statement?
I think in regard to what you said, I think that's something for men to do. And what I mean by that is I don't think, or at least most women I know, think men have to be like strong and macho and carry the heavy furniture and drive trucks and all of that. I think that's an expectation men have for each other. And so that's also part of where the toxic masculinity part can come in, Because another thing that you had said was, I guess the manifestation of toxic masculinity is a result of like needing help, like a cry for help and not necessarily getting it. But I would say that feeling like you can't ask for that help is part of toxic masculinity in itself. Because again, I think that's an expectation that men put on each other. You have to be strong, you have to, do all these things. And like I said, no woman I know has that expectation. I don't think
you might not have that expectation from the perspective of wording that and saying it. But look at the dudes who have the most access to women. What are they? Do they sit around and cry? Do they talk about their emotions? No, most of the dudes are tatted, have good jobs, or have no jobs and are pretty boys and just lie. And like there's no in between. There's a shit ton of dudes, good dudes, make $40,000 a year, could give you a decent life, a okay life. But right now the sentiment isn't we need to go for these balanced men. Most of the men who are getting most of the attention usually are the bad boys. And that's literally a common theme. So how can you say that while also at the same time saying that, well, you guys should ask for help? From who?
I think men should have to be strong all the time because they're not, and that's okay. But I think men need to start holding themselves to that same standard, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Question for you, 'cause I know that guys don't have to be, right? I do hear a lot about that. What do you think happens to men when they don't follow that? You're a man, you're supposed to be this and that. Let's say you started crying right now in front of everybody.
Yeah.
In your normal situation, how would you be accepted for that?
Is someone who kind of built their self-confidence up, and if you're someone who's not like self-conscious and things, you can release those type of emotions around your friends, and it's actually a good thing. And it's something that can help bond with people. I know for sure that a lot of times when guys do go out and they share their feelings, maybe they're crying with their wife, the wife doesn't see them exactly how they were before. They lose a little bit of respect because he's not that masculine man. So it's not just on the men's side where it's like, oh, we need you to be masculine. The women, they want to be, well, ideally feminine, and like they need that masculine to balance each other out. And so
I think we gotta split the conversation up, because when you're talking about your wife, that's completely different than talking about your girlfriend and talking about somebody that you're dating. Okay, men have emotions. Men cry. That happens. The difference between what I think she's trying to get out of men versus what men are willing to give is the fact that because we become a level of emotional, it is only accepted to a certain extent. And that extent usually is not to the extent that she's trying to portray. If you're married, I'm pretty sure most married couples, especially once they're over the 10-year period, she's seen her man cry. And she doesn't necessarily think that he's a lesser person for crying. The aspect of men not crying isn't really something that I think is explained enough or thought through enough, right? Because I do understand, like, if you're at a funeral and, it's your best friend or your mom dies, things like that. Okay, you're gonna be emotional. But what I think a man thinks of as emotional versus what a woman thinks of as emotional are two very different things. Because I have tears coming down my cheeks is one thing, but being emotional, which would be in a sense somewhat uncontrolling, sobbing, somewhat loud and yelling, that's something that men don't do. That's something that I think men usually talk about. It's like we're not going to get like that. Like, I'd rather go and I'd rather go to the gym, I'd rather go to the range, I'd rather go get into a fight or something, right? And maybe the get into a fight is not a good thing, but my point is just that the level of emotion that we are willing to exude is different than a woman, and that needs to be understood.